Hi there. My name is Michael Gannaway, and welcome to another episode of Diving Deep. Seen on the Tonguesoffire.TV network. We started this new show by diving deep into the 23rd Psalm. It's a psalm that pretty much any believer knows, has memorized, and most people outside of the faith are at least familiar with it. And our intention is to dig deep into these 6 verses and see what nuggets of wisdom lie within this relatively short passage. Last time, we examined verses 1 and 2. So today, we shall start diving deep into verse 3. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Okay, let's start with the first part. He restores my soul. Okay. What is the soul? What is anybody's soul? Well, first we have to think about what exactly we are. We are spiritual beings. That is what we are, that possess a soul and reside in a body. The soul consists of your mind, will, and emotions. When your soul is in restoration, it's sad, downtrodden, anxious, angry, bitter, without joy. I'm sure we all know what that feels like. Well, here David is saying, the Lord is the restorer of my soul. All right. Let's look a little further into what David has to say about the soul and what may ail it. Let's go to Psalm 41. Psalm 41, verse 4. I said, Lord, be merciful to me. Heal my soul, for I have sinned against you. Here David is asking the Lord to heal his soul. He's asking him to restore his soul because he has sinned against you. Yes. Someone like David, when he commits sin, is going to feel terrible about it because he's a man after God's own heart. There are people who happily sin, commit evil, and think nothing of it. Why? Because they're not after God. They don't care about God. But to David, God's approval means everything to him. And he knows that when he commits sin, he has hurt his God. He has hurt his Creator. He has hurt his Lord. But the very fact that he cries out to the Lord to heal his soul, it more or less means that he wants forgiveness for what he's done. Yes, so receiving forgiveness from the Lord is a restorer of your soul. And listen, when we sin, the Lord wants to restore our souls. He wants us to He wants to forgive us. But the forgiveness has to be requested. It has to be asked for. And that requires having the humility to recognize that you've done wrong. If you don't think you have done wrong, then you're not going to seek his forgiveness. You're not going to want it. And there are those who do wrong, know that they've done wrong, and they really don't care because they would because the pleasures of that sin far outweigh any guilt that they may feel to commit it. But in any case, what David is saying is that committing sin and feeling the shame of it can cause his soul, cause him a guilty conscience, and therefore he needs the forgiveness of the Lord to restore his soul. All right. Now let's go to Psalm 42. Verse 1. As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. So my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they continually say to me, where is your God? When I remember these things, I pour out my soul within me. For I used to go with the multitude. I went with them to the house of God. With a voice of joy and praise, with a multitude that kept a pilgrim feast. So, here David is describing he's in a state of longing for the presence of God, longing for the company of God himself. You know, there are times when God feels distant from us, and it may be because we've just drifted away from him. You know, God hasn't gone anywhere. We have. We've drifted away. That could be the case. It could also be the case where God is not allowing David to feel his presence simply because God wants David to learn how to trust that he's there, even when he can't feel him. That could be. But in any case, this distance from God is making his soul starved, and thirst, in a state of thirst for the closeness of God, for the intimacy with God. So, yeah, I've heard it said that in all of us there is a God-sized vacuum within us that only God himself can fill. And we try to fill it with so many other things. We try to fill it with money, try to fill it with pleasures, relationships, success, drugs and alcohol, adrenaline rushes, all kinds of things, and they just can't fill it. So it's quite possibly this is how David feels, like he's missing something. However, he knows exactly what it is he's missing. He's missing God. Now, how he ended up with this, I don't know. But the point is, you know, a restoration of the soul, the satisfaction, is only filled by intimacy with God. And ultimately, that's something we have to seek. You know, I mean, when we don't even know about God, God will seek after us. He'll chase us down. But once we know God, and we start to have a relationship, then it's up to us to start seeking Him and start, seeking the intimacy of Him. Yeah. The responsibility then falls on us. All right. Going back to Psalm 23, verse 3. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He leads me in the paths of righteousness. Well, what are these paths of righteousness? And how does God lead him? Because God is not there in the flesh for David to see. So obviously he can't just follow God around. in the natural. So what does it mean, to be led in these paths of righteousness? Well, for that, we go to Proverbs chapter 2. Let's look at verse 20. So you may walk in the way of goodness and keep to the paths of righteousness. Okay, so here we have paths of righteousness mentioned again. And it's about walking in the way of the goodness, keeping to the paths of righteousness. Now, to truly understand what this means, you got to look at it in context. Now, Proverbs 2 is a proverb that tells of the value of wisdom. Yeah. So, in order to get the context that verse 20, we must first read the proverb. So let's start at verse 1. Okay. My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding, yes, if you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice for understanding, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Okay, so what's being emphasized here? Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. All of these things come from God. And all of these things can be obtained from God if we seek after them. And seek after them, as Solomon wrote, seek for her as silver, search for her as hidden treasures. Because that's how valuable wisdom is, and knowledge and understanding. So, it sounds to me like perhaps David is led on these paths of righteousness by having the wisdom and knowledge and understanding of God himself. Right. Let's continue reading Proverbs 2 here. Verse 7. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. He guards the paths of justice and preserves the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. So, for those who want to walk in the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding of God, which is obtained through seeking God, seeking his word, calling out to the Spirit to give you understanding of the word. Oh yeah, listen, you cannot understand the word without the Spirit. You can't. Because the word just doesn't make a whole lot of sense without the Spirit. The Spirit is the author, the inspiration of the word. You need it. All right. But if you're walking in it, look what he says. A shield to those who walk uprightly, guards the paths of justice, preserves the way of his saints. There's protection for those who choose to walk in the wisdom and knowledge of God. All right. Verse 10. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, yes, having knowledge is a pleasure to your soul. Remember what we talked about earlier, the restoration. Yeah. In the word it says, my people suffer from a lack of knowledge. Well, when you have the knowledge, well, then you won't be suffering, will you? That would certainly be a restoration to your soul, wouldn't it? Of course it would. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you, understanding will keep you, to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things, from those who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness. Oh, did you catch that? Yeah, it's possible to leave the paths of righteousness and go the ways of darkness. Oh, yeah. You know, it's not how you start, but it's how you finish. And if you don't finish on the paths of righteousness, doesn't matter how good of a start you had, you will be lost. Yeah. And that's something we have to always be aware of. You know, am I truly walking the way God wants me to? You know, am I living according to the Word? You know, am I thinking godly thoughts? Am I spending my time doing godly things? Or am I just doing worthless things or evil things? You know, we can't just be talking about how good we used to be. No, that's past. It's what are you doing right now? Well, who are you right now? Okay. Continuing. Okay, from those who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the way of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked and who are devious in their paths. All right. Whose ways are crooked and devious in their paths. You know, Jesus said, the broad way leads to destruction, but my way is the narrow way. Now that, at first that sounds a little intimidating, you know, the narrow way, you know, not much room for error, but the narrow way is also the straight way. I mean, there's nothing simpler than just walking in a straight line. No crooked ways, you know, to throw you off track. It's a straight line. And right ahead of you is Jesus. You know, if you're focused on Jesus, everything will fall into place. Everything. And you keep your focus on Jesus, you soon forget about the things of the world. That's all you care about. Especially as you move closer and closer and closer along in life, and you can see Jesus more and more and more. Oh, man. When the end becomes closer in sight, there's just no thinking about the world. You don't care about the world anymore because you know you're at the end. Okay. However, if you spend too much time off the paths of righteousness, you forget the end. You don't know where it is. You don't know how to find your way back. All right, continuing. Whose ways are crooked, and who are devious in their paths, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth, and forgets the covenant of her God. The immoral woman, a seductress, forgets the covenant of her God. She once was in covenant with God, but has forgotten it. Fallen away. And apparently she'll gladly take others with her. For her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead. None who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life. Oh my. You know, I'm not sure whether Solomon is speaking totally figuratively here, or he is in fact being literal about the perils of sexual sin. But let me tell you something. Going down the ways of sexual sexual immorality is deadly. You know, a lot of diseases have been created out of sexual immorality. It's killed a lot of people. How many people have been killed by jilted lovers? You know, wrong spouses, jealous boyfriends, girlfriends. And really, when stuff like that happens, there's usually an adulteress involved, or a spirit of adultery. And even if none of that happens, you know, even if you don't die of a disease or of a jilted lover or a wrong spouse, the fact is, once you get started in that sexual immorality, you really can't find your way out. You really can't find your way out because it's just a bottomless pit. It's never satisfied. And no matter how much sex or pleasures you try to fill it with try to fill it to satisfy that need, the need never goes away. Oh yeah. It really is that hard to escape because sex is so powerful. All right. Anyway, none who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you may walk in the way of goodness and keep to the paths of righteousness, which we already discussed. For the upright will dwell in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the earth, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it. Yeah. So anyway, it's so important to remain on the paths of righteousness, but guess what? The Lord God will happily lead us down them. You know, the Lord will protect those who are on the paths of righteousness, and he will show you how to walk through his wisdom, through his knowledge, and through his understanding. You know, and when you truly grasp, you know, how essential it is to have wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to remain on the paths of righteousness, you will understand that having that stuff is as precious as silver and as hidden treasures. And that's why we should constantly be seeking them. Okay? All right. The last part. Now, wait. Before I get to that part, let's go to Proverbs 8. Here, staying on the subject of wisdom, here wisdom is presented as an actual person. You know, this is wisdom speaking, you know, starting in verse 12. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride and arrogance and the evil way and the perverse mouth I, wisdom, hate. Counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. By my kings reign and rulers decree justice. By me princes rule and nobles, all the judges of the earth. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently will find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yes, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I traverse the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of justice, that I may cause those who love me to inherit wealth, that I may fill their treasuries. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way, before his works of old. Oh, look, did you catch that? The Lord possessed me wisdom at the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I have been established from the beginning, from I've been established from everlasting, from the beginning, before there was ever an earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth or fields or the primal dust of the world. Before creation, there was wisdom. Let's go to John chapter 1. Gospel of John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. The Word was with God. Wisdom was with God before creation. So it sounds to me like wisdom really is a person. Wisdom is the Messiah himself. You know, you go back to Genesis, where God is talking to Cain, and and he says sin crouches at the door. You know, he made it sound like sin was an actual person. Well, yes, sin is an actual person, the devil. So if sin is the devil, then rest assured, wisdom is Yeshua. Is Messiah. Yes. Jesus Messiah is wisdom in the flesh. When you seek him and when you have him, you are on the paths of righteousness, folks. Finally, for his name's sake. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Let's go to Psalm 31. Okay, starting in verse 1. In you, O Lord, I put my trust. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in your righteousness. Bow down your ear to me. Deliver me speedily. Be the rock of my refuge, a fortress of defense to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for your name's sake, lead me and guide me. So, again, being led and guided by God is for his name's sake. It's not for your sake or my sake, but for his name's sake. Why? Well, because God says he is a protector of his saints. You know, he protects those who put their faith in him. And so, by leading him and guiding him, his name's sake, his good name is protected. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We will dive deep into verse 4 next time. Thank you.